Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Samech Zayin Amud Beis, starting with Samech Zayin Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the bottom. The Gemara continues discussing whether one can about one's reshus to another Jew in certain circumstances. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Yehud Omar Shmuel. Rav Yehud said in the name of Shmuel the following: Nachri sheyesh loy pesach arbo al arbo. If he has an entranceway of 4 by 4 tefachim, lebika, entering into a sadeh, an open field, afilu machnis umoitzi gemalim ukronos kol hayam kuloi derech mavui. Even if he then brings in and out donkeys and carriages throughout the entire day, through the mavui, ein oiser al b'nei mavui. This nachri does not oiser on the b'nei mavui. We view him as a visitor, and therefore the Yisrael doesn't have to even be soicher the reshus from this nachri, since this nachri has this Pesach daled al daled tefachim that is opened up to the bika. We say that it's neicha, it's going to be good for him, and therefore is not going to then oiser on the Yisrael. The Gemara explains now. My time. What's the reason? In that opening that he has to the bika, it's neicha to him. And Rashi explains, Mishum deika avirot fei mimavui, and therefore he's not oiser onto the Yisrael because he has this entranceway to the bika. Ask the Gemara, what about if it opens up to a karpef? Now a karpef, we explained before at length, a karpef is an enclosed area, not for residential purposes. Usually it's outside of the outskirts of the city, and it's places wood to then be stored in such a place called a karpef. And the Gemara says, what happens if his Pesach was opened up to a karpef, this nachri? Does he oiser onto the Yisrael or not? Omar Rav Nachman bar Ami mishmedu ulpana. Rav Nachman bar Ami said in the name of his Rebbe, who heard the name of his Rebbe, he has the Masorah. Top of Zayin, Samach Zayin Amud Beis. Afilu pasuach lekarpef. Even if indeed this is open, the entrance to a karpef, this also will not then oiser onto the Yisrael. Rabbi Yossi Travaihu, the two of them said both together, Nachri, Beis Osayim oiser. If it's the size of a Beis Osayim, of course it's smaller, then it will, yes, oiser. If the Pesach is only going to an area that is Beis Osayim. What is Beis Osayim? It's 50 by 100 square amos, which comes out to be 5,000 square amos. That area, if it's less than that or less, then it's not going to be considered to be chashuv enough for the nachri, whereby he will then still oiser on the Yisrael, the mavui. But if it's yoiser mi beis osayim, ain't oiser. But if it's greater, it's a bigger area, then it has chashivus to the nachri, and therefore we'll say that it's neicha to that nachri, whereby he's not going to be oiser onto the Yisrael. That's in regards to a nachri. What happens if a Yisrael did not make an eruv? He did not make an eruv with the rest of the bnei chotzer. What's the din over here? It says the Gemara of Yisrael, according to Rabbi of Yosef, by beis osayim eino oiser yosim beis osayim oiser. He says, and according to the Yisrael, it's the exact opposite. If it's going to be more than a beis osayim, more than 5,000 squared amos, then he will yes oiser on the other bnei chotzer. But if it's going to be leading into an area that is less than a beis saw, then he will not oiser. Why over here is this different than what we said before? We said when it comes to the nachri, if it's bigger than beis saw, he's not oiser because it has chashivus. The answer is because over here, in regards to the Yisrael, the chashivus is only if it's less than a beis saw, because only then you can freely carry in that area. If it's beyond a beis saw, the Chacham made into a karmelis, which we'll soon explain at length, that what makes it osir midirabonan to be metaltil more than dalet amos in that area. So therefore, that would then not have chashivus to the Yisrael, and he would yes oiser onto the rest of the bnei chotzer if it's going to be beyond a beis saw. Ask the Gemara, he asked from Rav Huna the following question: Pasuach lekarpeif mahu. Again, this is the same question we had seen just before. If the Nachri has an entrance the way that's opened up to a carpet, we said to a bika for sure, he's not going to be oiser on the other bnei chatzir that are bnei Yisrael. But what about a karpef? So above, the Gemara's question was asked. Now the Gemara asks the same question. What's the din? Omar lei. Rav Huna answered him, Hare Amru, Beis Hosayim Oyser, Yosem Beis Hosayim Eino Oyser. Behold, he said, when it comes to a karpef, it depends on the size. If it's just up until a Beis Hosayim, we said 5,000 square amos, then he will still Oyser. But if it's greater than a Beis Hosayim, then again, it has Chashivot, it's Neicha to the Nachri, and therefore he will not Oyser unto the Yisrael who is sharing that Chatzar together with him. Omar Ula, says the Gemara Vaiter, Omar B'Yochanan. Ula says the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the following halacha. Karpef Yosem Bebeis Hosayim, Shaloi Hukaf Ledira, Afilu Kurva, Afilu Kurayim Hazorek L'Soicha Chayiv. He says, if you have a area that's greater than Beis Hosayim, again, better than 5,000 square amos, that is encircled with mechitzos and is for non-residential purpose, a karpef, then even if it's a kur or two kur, bigger, one who is throwing an object from the Rishus HaRabim into that area, that karpef, is going to be a chayiv chatas for the malacha of hoitzah, transferring. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan considers this area of the karpef, which is greater than the Beis Hosayim, as being a Rishus HaYochid. And therefore, he's chayiv for hoitzah, the malacha of hoitzah, from transferring from the Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYochid. And therefore he's chayav a korban chatos. My taimo. Gemara asks, what's the reason? Mechitza hish ela shemechuseres diurim. Because again, it's mechitzos is surrounded by walls, so it has the din rishus hayochid. Granted, it's not for residential purposes, but it's considered rishus hayochid midiraisa. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan holds over here. He's chayav chatos. Ask the Gemara Mosiv Rav Huna bar Chinana. He asked from the following Braisa, Sela shebiyam gavoyasa rochav arbo. If you have a sela, a rock that has dimensions of a rishus hayochid, it's 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. A metaltalin lo min toicho liyam v'lo min hayam letoicho. You're not able to then carry an object from that rock to the yam, or vice versa. Pachos mikan metaltalin. But if it's less than these dimensions, the Sefer over here says, it doesn't have the dimensions of a Rishus HaYochid, then it will have a din of a Karmelis, whereby you could go ahead and metaltel from the rock to the sea, and vice versa, because it's really going from a area that is an Isser D'Rabbanan of a Karmelis to another Karmelis, no problem. Ad kamo, until how much? The Brisa concludes, ad beis sosayim, until 2 sosayim, until beis sosayim. Ask the Gemara, the latter part of the Brisa that says ad kamo ad beis sosayim ahoyoy. On what is this going on? What is this talking? What is it referring to? Says the Gemara, Ilay Masechet. This is going to then come to ask the question that Gemara is building up to. If you want to say it's going on the Sefer of the Brisa, which means we're talking about a rock that does not have the dimension of Yochid, it's a Karmelis, whereby it states in the Brisa so you can go from the rock to the Yam or vice versa. So ask the Gemara, if we're talking about that, then Beis Hosayim hu de metaltalinon tfei loy. You can only go ahead and metaltal if it's the size of a Beis Hosayim, but if it's more than not, why not? Hare, it's still a Karmelis. V'ho me Karmelis the Karmelis kametaltil. You're only going from a Karmelis to a Karmelis, which is mutter. So why would it make a difference that the Brisa has to stay ad kamo, ad beis hosayim? Mashma beyond that, not. So it cannot be referring l'chara to the Sefer of our Brisa. What is it referring to then? Says Gemara el lava ratio. It's going back on the ratio. Again, the ratio is referring to a case where the rock does have the dimensions of a rishus hayochid. It's 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. And therefore, the Brisa states that you cannot go ahead and take an object from the rock, which is a Rishus HaYochid, to the sea, which is a Karmelis, or vice versa. And now, this is what the Brisa is Sela shebiyam gavoya asar v'roichav dalid, when it's 10 asar tvachim high and 4 tvachim wide, the dimensions of Rishus Yachid, ein metaltalin lo mitoichan liyom v'lo miyahayom letoichan. You can't go metaltal from this rock to the sea or vice versa, because you'll be going from a Rishus Yachid to a Carmelis, and vice versa. It would also be an Isser. Then the Brisa which states v'ad kamo ad beis sosayim is talking about until beis sosayim, because until beis sosayim it still has the din as a Rishus Hayachid, the rock. Diuk. Now the Gemara is asking from the diuk. Ha yeser mi beis sosayim metaltlin. But if it is greater than beis sosayim, then you could go ahead and metaltel. That means to say that would be mutter. And if that's mutter, based on the diuk of this brisa, that's only up until beis sosayim, that it's a problem to go from the rock to the sea, because that's going to be a problem of taking an object from the Rishus Yachid to the Rishus Rabim, but greater than beis sosayim, which would then make it a Carmelis, would be then mutter from going to the rock to the yam, then alma Carmelisi to Yuf to the Rabbi Yochanan. So we see that a Carmelis would then be lakula. You would then go from a Carmelis to another Carmelis. Not like Rabbi Yochanan who said that when you have an area that's enclosed for non-residential purposes, that karpef, which has a din of a Carmelis, if you throw an object from the Rishus Rabim into that karpef, you be chayiv chatos. L'chora, it's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, because here we're saying that this area is considered to be like a Carmelis, not a Rishus Yachid. Omar Rava said, "Man de lo yada tirutim mas naisa tiyufta moisiv le Rabbi Yochanan." The one does not know how to then explain the brisa. He's going to then make a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan because you don't know how to explain up the brises. That's going to then bring out a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. No, lo ma reisha. It is going on the reisha, but it's not a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, because why? For hachi kamar. This is how you have to read the brisa. Ha bisoichay metalton. That which is inside, meaning on the rock itself, you go ahead and metaltil freely because it's a Rishus Hayachid. V'ad kama, how much can you freely walk with an object on the rock? Ad beis sosayim, only to beis sosayim, because only then is Rishus Hayachid. Beyond that, the Chachamim were goizer that has the din of a Carmelis. If you go ahead and walk between, if you walk beyond in that area. In other words, if it's going to be a rock that's more than beis sosayim, then you cannot walk more than daled amos. That's what he's talking about. It's not talking about going from the rock to the sea. It's talking about the rock itself. When the rock itself is up to beis sosayim, right? Then it's going to be a Rishus Yachid. You can walk freely on it. But if it's going to be beyond beis sosayim, then the Chachamim made a takana, and they said it has a din of a Carmelis. Why? They were concerned if a person can then walk freely in such a large area beyond beis sosayim, they might make a mistake and think you can go ahead and also freely walk and carry an object in the Rishus Rabim. So that's what the Bryce is saying in the Reisha. So it's not a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan at all. Rav Ashi Omar. Rav Ashi said, La'olam areisha. Also, he says, really, we're going on the Reisha. It's not going to be a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Why? Because Hein Amru, Vehein Amru. The Chachamim they said, and the Chachamim they said something else as well. As follows. Hein Amru, they stated, Karpef Yesemi Beis Sosayim. Shalo Hukaf Lediro. Ein Metaltlin Boy Ele B'Dalet Amos. If you have a Karpef that is beyond Beis Sosayim, you can only carry Dalet Amos. Shalo Hukaf Lediro. Ein Metaltlin Boy Ele B'Dalet Amos. Only Dalet Amos. If it's beyond 2,000 amos, because it has a din of a karpef. And therefore, the Chacham, like we just said, we're concerned that a person may freely walk and carry also in the Rishus Rabim. So therefore, they said a karpef beyond beis sosayim is also going to be prohibited midirabanan. They also stated, Ein metaltlin mi Rishus Hayachid lekarmelis. You cannot metaltlin from Rishus Hayachid to a karmelis. They also said that's also midirabanan, even though midiraisa there's no such thing as a karmelis. But they said if you go from a Rishus Hayachid to a Carmelis, that's also midrabanan. You cannot go ahead and carry an object from one to the other. Beis sosayim deshari litiltule bikulei. A beis sosayim that is permitted to then carry in its entire area. Asre abonon litiltule. Lo min hayam l'soichel lo mosoichel liyam. They said you cannot go ahead and carry from that place to the yam, or the yam to that place, to the rock, because then it would be going from like a Rishus HaYochid to the Carmelis, or vice versa. My time Rishus HaYochid Gemurahi, because up until 2000, because this rock is a din of a Rishus HaYochid, so therefore they asked you to go from the rock to the sea and vice versa. Yeser mi beis Osayim, if it's beyond the rock more than the area of 2,000 of beis Osayim, which is 5 times squared amos, there they answered to them metaltel more than dalar amos. Shor Rabbon metaltel mitoichel liyam uminayam letoichel. Then the Rabbanon did permit you to then metaltel from that rock to the yam, because that rock to the yam is now from a Carmelis to a Carmelis, or from a yam letoichel, or from the yam to the rock, again from Carmelis to Carmelis. They said it's okay. My time, what's the reason? Dilma amrei Rishus HaYochid gemurahi v'asu letutul bekulei. Because they said maybe a person would say that this whole area is a Rishus HaYochid gemura, and therefore they permit you then go from the Rishus HaYochid gemura to the Carmelis, that is going to be from the Rishus HaYochid to the Carmelis, in this case to the sea. You'll come to then metaltel in the entire area, the Hainu. You'll come to metaltel bekulei in all of it. Meaning to say that here there's going to be a problem. A person might make a mistake. If he's going to be permitted and think that over here, since it's a Rishus HaYochid, then he'll go ahead and metaltil freely, even in a case where it's going to be not the Rishus HaYochid. So therefore they answered. So again, it comes out that the Rabbanim made 2 takanas. They say that when it comes to going from within a base saw, that whole thing is a Rishus HaYochid. You can obviously walk entirely in that area. But once it goes beyond a base saw, you can't go more than Dalet Amos in that area. You can't carry Dalet Amos in that area. They answered it. They similarly answered to go from a larger than base Sosayim to from larger base Sosayim from there to Dalet Amos within that area, because they said again, one may make a mistake and think that he can carry freely in the Rishus HaRabim as well. Ask the Gemara, Umayshno, what's the distinction from all of this? Why did they make a takana here, not there? Says the Gemara, Toichoi shechiach, mitoicha liyam min hayam letoicha l'shchiach. Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi explains the question. Umayshno, what is the distinction? What is the difference between these 2 takanas? The olim hach takan mehach, that they make this takana stronger than the other. Now also, you'll be metaltel from Rishus HaYochid to the Carmelis, says the Gemara. So why don't you then also say there's an equal problem? The Gemara makes a distinction. Toichoi shechiach, when it's inside, says Rashi, v'chi shori le'tilti begavo, inside, then chozi le'almo u'michle b'shul rabim. You come to make a mistake and think you can also carry in Rishus HaRabim. So they answered it. Mitoichoi, that's common. That's considered to be shchiach. Mitoichoi liyam lo shchiach. But from the rock to the yam, that's not something that's typical. And therefore, says Rashi, v'lo gozer rabban milsa lo shchicha. The Rabban didn't make a gezer on davar shelo shchiach. Something that's not common. Even though it's true, they said you cannot carry from a Rishus HaYochid to a Carmelis or vice versa. Hanu shechicham, because that's when it's common. But here, these two instances, right? These 2 areas, when it's are like one, right? He says more than Beis Hasayim. If you go from the rock, and the rock itself is greater than Beis Hasayim, and from the rock you then will carry from the rock to the yam. They're both considered to be karmis. Over here, they wouldn't make a gezerah, and therefore, since it's not shchiach, they say it's going to be mutter to then carry from the rock to the yam, or the yam to the rock when the rock is going to be greater than Beis Hasayim.